My name is Peaches Golding, and I'm Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant for Bristol.
You were born in North Carolina. What was it like growing up there?
Well, I grew up at a golden time in America because when I first started as a young girl, segregation laws were still in place. So I can remember segregated America as a child, which meant that there were certain shops you couldn't go into, there were certain activities you couldn't participate in, you couldn't stop and get petrol on the side of the road and expect to be able to go to the toilet, for example. So it was a very strange time if we think about where we are now. But it also was a time when doors were opening and black people could start doing some of those things that we always wanted to do, some of those things that you have dreams about doing when you're a child. So to come into that in my early teenage years was also wonderful because you were sort of growing as a person, but also the opportunities that were available were also growing for you. So I think I had a very happy childhood. My parents loved us. They were inquisitive, and we did all sorts of things that you just wouldn't imagine. It was a great childhood, actually.
Your father was an incredible civil rights activist. How has his influence helped to shape your career?
Yes, my father was quite an incredible man. And I guess it starts before many of us know the story, before I was born. He was in the military, in the Army, and he passed the exam to become an officer. Not once, not twice, but on 3 occasions he passed the exam. And he was not able to become an officer because he was black. And the white men said, "We are not having a black man telling us what to do." So that was kind of really important in his life. I guess then when he was back in the U.S. after the war, he refused to sit on the back of the bus. Rosa Parks became very well known for so doing. My father did it 9 years before Rosa Parks. The story goes around that we moved from South Carolina, where I was born, the state I was born in, up to North Carolina because the KKK burned a cross on the lawn. But it wasn't the lawn of our house. Mistaken identity. They put it on neighbor's lawn. But nonetheless, we moved up to North Carolina and had a wonderful life there. So I think my father always taught us to understand what the law is, treat people with respect, even if they are doing the wrong thing, especially if they are in authority, but challenge and be firm about it and be sure-footed in where your challenge is coming from.
What inspired you to settle in Bristol?
Oh, I met the most gorgeous man, my darling husband. Yes, we met in West Africa. My husband was the director of a zoo at the University of Ibadan, and by the time we left Nigeria, he had been there for 16 years. I am a zoologist by training. That's where my degree is, and we found that we both liked snakes, and we both kept snakes, and we found that we had lots of things in common. And so when he left Nigeria, Bristol seemed a very good place to come to. We lived in London for a little while. We lived up in the Cotswolds for a little while. But we decided, Bristol is cool. We'll stay here.
In 2017, you became the UK's first black female Lord Lieutenant. How does it feel to be given such a prestigious role in the city of Bristol?
Do you know, being made Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant was something you couldn't dream about. I talked about dreams when I talked about my childhood and being able to imagine doing all sorts of things. This is a dream that I never had the possibility to dream. Let me explain a little bit about the lieutenancy and what happens when a vacancy occurs. Well, the role of the lieutenancy is to support Her Majesty in all of the things that she does, and she does a tremendous amount of things, and we might come to talk about all of those things, or some of those things. We as Lord Lieutenants serve until our 75th birthday. 75th birthday. So it's known when a Lord Lieutenant will retire. About 9 months before that, there is a consultation in the county area. There are about 100 of us across the UK, so it's doable. So there's a consultation, and that consultation brings together people of all walks of life. So it could be military, religious, civic, social, voluntary sectors, anything that you can think of. They pull together people and they ask them 2 questions. The first question is, what are the things that are happening in this area in the next 10 years or so? Talk about them. So it could be anything from physical developments to the types of industry that's here, to some of the social issues that might arise, to how it is that people get. You can just imagine the types of topics that people will talk about, because everyone has a view about these things. The second question that they ask is, who is best placed to lead the county area over that period of time? So names will bubble up in that discussion. I was asked during the discussion if I would like my name to go forward. I said, I need to think about that. Because you're thinking about, something that could change your life. Probably won't. So I was informed that maybe 2 or 3 names would come out of that consultation. They would be presented to the Prime Minister, who would then make a recommendation to Her Majesty, who, if pleased, would make the appointment. So you think, wow, what are the chances? What are the odds? 30%? That's pretty far distant odds. So after much discussion among the Golding family, because it affects everybody, I said, yes, I'll put my ring in the hat. And then about 2 months later, lo and behold, a letter from the Prime Minister came to say she was minded to make this recommendation. So really at that point you can't say, I've had second thoughts, no thank you.
What is your specific role and duties?
My role is to represent Her Majesty when she is not in Bristol. And my role is to ensure that the lines of communication, let's call it that, between the palaces and the people are open. And one of the best ways of doing that is to encourage members of our royal family to come to Bristol and see the things that make us proud. Another thing to do is to help Bristolians realize there are a lot of people out there that do make us proud, and we should be recommending them for national honors. So that's all those people that have letters after their names, starting with MBEs, members of the British Empire, and going right the way up to knights of the British Empire. It means encouraging businesses to think, well, gosh, I could get a Queen's Award for the type of work that I do, because either I'm innovative, or I have to do with sustainability, or I have to do with promoting social mobility or international trade. It could be Commonwealth scholars. We have many young people at our universities here from Commonwealth countries that have been selected because of the quality of their the capability to study and the quality of the work that they produce. The Queen has a canopy in probably, we're trying to get it in all 53 of the Commonwealth countries. So there's work there that can be done. There's so many things that the royal family are interested in and involved with that touch our lives. So part of my role is to help people understand the relevance, the importance, the constancy, the amazing things that get done by our royal family.
Speaking about OBEs, you have one. Can you tell us a bit more about why you was awarded it?
Yes, I can do. I worked for about 18 years for one of Prince Charles' charities, let's call it that way. So the Prince of Wales has quite a number of charitable concerns. One of the things that he was very interested in the 1990s, this is a long story, I never tell short stories. One of the things that he was interested in the 1990s is around racial diversity. And why is it that so few minority ethnic-owned businesses were on the supply chain of major companies? At that time, I had 2 blue-chip clients for whom I did either national or global market research. And I worked with a whole range of businesses across the Southwest and across the country on how to increase racial diversity within their workplaces, whether it was by hiring people, by, as I say, having someone on your supply chain, by linking into communities, a whole range of objectives there. So I worked with a lot of the big companies from Cadbury's, the chocolate makers, to HSBC and NatWest in the financial sector, to some of the government organizations. I represented the Cabinet Office on some work in Hungary before they joined the European Union, working with Roma and women to increase their economic development. I also sat on a number of boards. So I sat on the board for HTV, which then became ITV West and West Country, and then other things. I was on the board of the group of people that won the franchise for GWR Radio, which then turned into Heart Radio. So I kind of had a lot of things going and was doing a whole lot. The thing they say about getting a national honor is you don't get it for the day job, you get it for the other things that you do. So there's a little bit of a hierarchy, and OBE indicates that the work that I was doing, that I was leading, was larger than our county area. So a lot of very kind people thought I was doing something worthwhile and wrote a recommendation, and here I am.
That is fantastic. You have an amazing resume. Very impressive. In 2010, you became the first ever Black High Sheriff in England. The post is more than 1,000 years old. Why do you think you were chosen to make that change?
Do you know, I don't know. That's a really good question, because the art of choosing the High Sheriff differs considerably from that of the Lord Lieutenant. Lord Lieutenant, that role is just about 500 years old. But as you were saying, the role of High Sheriff is over 1,000 years old. It's just right back in the mists of time. And the selection involves existing high sheriffs, probably high sheriffs to be, past high sheriff, but also members of the community, and the Lord Lieutenant gets to run her little sticky finger over the list of people recommended to ensure that she is content, because both of those posts are appointments of the Queen. So I think I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And certainly I think that's the story of my life, kind of being in the right place at the right time and being prepared to take the opportunities that arise. So, yeah.
What was it like to welcome Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle, to Bristol?
That was really special. That was an absolutely special visit. Not that every royal visit isn't special, because everyone is. But this one was particularly special, I think, because they're young, they're vibrant, they connect so much with a different demographic. Their concerns are concerns that we can understand and we can be interested in. And they're very articulate and open young people. So that was great. What you won't realize is, this is 2019, I started liaising with the household in November of 2017. So this just tells you how long it takes to get a visit, organized, to decide which venues we're going to, who we're going to talk to, what we're going to see, what we're going to do. And it's a very intensive piece of work. So I would imagine that 6 months before the visit, we were having very frequent telephone, email discussions about what's appropriate for them to do, where, how much time. Really interesting to develop that program, and then to work with the organizations that they were going to come and visit, again to help them to present themselves in the best way possible and talk about all of the issues that are important to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It was just wonderful. We also had an opportunity for a walkabout. It was not the best morning. It was snowy. And that really caused quite a lot of problems, not least about how they get from London to here within the time frame that we're looking at. So it was just magical when it happened, and that the crowds came out and stood in the cold, and that people were so wonderful and welcoming. I asked on my Twitter feed for people to tell me how the visit made them feel. And you know what Twitter is like. You get all sorts of responses and none sometimes. So I didn't know what I would get. But I had over 100 people, which is good for my Twitter feed. I've only got about 3,000 followers. I know you've got many, many more than that. So I put, I guess, in some sort of order what people felt. And by and large, the overwhelming thing was uplifted, encouraged. They felt it was inspirational. People felt happy. All of those very, very positive points. Yes, there was one person who said, nonplussed. There was another that said, I felt Republican. But they were 5 at best out of well over 100. So I think, visits like that make us realize what we are doing that's special, that's important.
Bristol is a very diverse city, so it's refreshing to see this diversity represented in top positions. This is clearly a symbol of change and progression. How does it make you feel to be a part of this incredible movement pushing for positive change in the city?
I feel very optimistic. As I mentioned earlier, since the 1990s, I've been working on that agenda which says we've got to bring communities together, we've got to bring businesses together. We have to figure out what are the barriers that stop people being able to excel when they have the capabilities to be able to do so. So now we're coming into that scene that is really encouraging. I remember the days when there were no black faces on the covers of magazines, when there were no black people in advertisements, when that just didn't exist. And now I see it right across all of our communities. So you get people with the darkest of dark skins and the fairest of fair skins, the curliest of curly hair to the straightest of whatever hair, the broadest of nose to the most narrow of nose, the most beautiful eyes of every shade that you can imagine, all being portrayed and all working together. And I really, really love it. I find it very encouraging. I find that just knowing 1 or 2 words in someone else's language in a city like Bristol, where we speak 91 different languages, is very important. I find that if we can understand bits about people's religion and their backgrounds and how they came to be here, it makes us all feel that much better. And we realize that, guess what? We are more alike than anything else.
You're coming from a corporate background. Was it hard for you to transition into your new role?
I have, I think, changed roles more than Carter's got little liver pills. Now that's an expression that you might not understand. But because I set up my business, and because I've worked in lots of different sectors and doing a range of different activities, I guess I've been used to being chucked in to the deep end and making sure that I come up, take a breath, and swim. So there are things that you have to learn all the time. And I find that this role has really made me learn a lot. I've had to learn a lot of history. I've had to understand how to move in circles that I've never moved in before. Many of my counterpart Lord Lieutenants come from landed families or from military backgrounds, have been used to for centuries occupying roles of a particular type, and a lot of that has been new, and a lot of it has been very enjoyable to learn.
Do you have any words of wisdom for young people who would like to follow in your footsteps?
I think you will not follow in my footsteps. You will leap off of my shoulders and go far, 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 far. And that's what I would say. Think big, because the only way to be big is to be big. And that means you have to be prepared. And that preparation means you need to have a lot of skills. The skill that says you're resilient, which means you know how to bounce back from defeat. You learn your most things when things go wrong. That's when you really learn a lot about yourself, and you can decide how you address that. You need to be not afraid to try new things and fail. You need to concentrate and work hard and be committed. You need to exceed people's expectations. You need to be consistent in trying to improve and relentless in trying to get better. Notice I didn't say be perfect, because there's no such thing as perfection, so don't get tangled up in that, but do try to be the very, very best that you can be. Apply yourself and learn yourself and improve yourself. And I think that's the advice that I would give people. Don't be afraid of anything. Everybody is going to feel something that makes them nervous or inhibited at many, many points in their lives. So the thing is to understand how you react to that, and always put your better foot forward. You only have 2 feet, so it can't be your best foot. Put your better foot forward.
In years to come, what would you hope your legacy is within Bristol?
I have never thought about that question before. What would my legacy be? Should my legacy be? I think it should be around encouraging and enabling people to do great things, however they describe that. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all world, and I think there's room for people of all types, of all abilities, of all interests to do really well. And I would just like people to think, I can do that, because I've seen that other person do something that they never thought was possible.
And lastly, where can we find you online?
Well, I have a Twitter feed. I'm always trying to get my numbers up. I'm at Peaches Tweets, so that's good. For the lieutenancy, I also think it's really important for people to understand what their Lord Lieutenant gets up to. So I have a website, www.lordltbristol.org.uk. Or you can just Google Peaches Golding, Lord Lieutenant of Bristol, and I'm sure you will be taken there. And again, my Twitter feed pops up there. I try to do a couple of news and events so that people know what I do. They won't know everything I do, because this week I've got 12 appointments in the diary, and it could be between 12 and 18 every week, and some of those are public and some of those aren't. So that's on my website, as well as how to apply for a Queen's Award, how to recognize someone for a national honor, a little bit about who and what I do. So find me.